welcome everybody. I'm Jared Santek. I'm Artistic Director at Right On Door County, and we're very happy to be collaborating with Door County Libraries on the NEA Big Read Door County. So we're very thrilled to be able to present this program for you with Aaron Renier, who will talk about creating graphic novels and comics. Aaron is the author of 3 graphic novels for young readers, and 2 summers ago he led a week-long class for students your age on creating comic books at Right On, and it was a wonderful week. We were really happy to have him and hope that he'll come back, and we're very glad that we can spend this time with you this afternoon. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
All right, here we go. I'm hoping that people have paper and pencils. So paper and pencils. We're going to draw a lot. I'm going to go through. Like how I design characters and how I lay out a picture, and I'm going to talk about how to just make a simple comic. So we're going to do kind of 3 different things, and we'll see how much we get through. So I'm just going to kind of, and if there are any questions as I go, you know, maybe like a teacher could let me know, or somebody could let me know. I don't want to confuse anybody. All right. So I just wanted to just start off, just like kind of introduce myself. These are 2 of my 3 books. There's a sequel to the one on the right, but the first one is called Spiral Bound, and it's sort of an anthropomorphic, like adventure story. Kind of, it's like, I always kind of intend my work for middle school age students or maybe above, just because that's kind of when I got into reading and even comics. So these are my two of my 3 books. This is a picture from the first book. This is just an example of a scene. And what I'm hoping to do today is to show you that, like, when I make a picture like this, or this is from the sequel to Walker Bean. Like, when I make pictures like this, like, I don't just start drawing somebody's head and then draw the rest. Like, I plan it out. And it's really difficult to make really complex images. And I'm not saying that everybody has to make complex images, but it's hard to make complex images without a degree of planning. So I'm hoping not to take any fun out of drawing. It's just that I'm going to kind of give you tips that, even things that I learned in middle school. So anyway, those are 2 images from my books. So the first thing that I like talking about, and a lot of students like talking about, is characters. I'm assuming that a lot of you know what this image is, or who these characters are. These are characters from the TV show Steven Universe on Cartoon Network. The thing that I wanted to show you, or even like just sort of briefly address, is that, like, they're all like really unique individual characters, like internally. Like, the most important thing about characters in general are their internal lives. You know, who are they? That sort of thing. So once you have that down, the big thing, you know, for drawers is that you want your characters to feel unique from one another. You want them to not be confused with one another. You want to be able to be clear with, you know, the characters. And that is because the way that we identify them so quickly is because of their silhouettes. Like, that's the number one, like, rule in designing characters, is creating a memorable silhouette. So, like, if the lights go out, you can see, you know who they are without even thinking about it. So this is just another example of the importance of silhouette. Just thinking about basic shapes. You know, if you have one character that has a head that's a circle, then maybe the next character you make has the head that's like the shape of a peanut. Oh yeah, one thing, I'm trying to go really fast because I have a lot of things that I want to talk about. But I do encourage you to you can even draw while I'm talking if you want. And you can look, like if you have a piece of paper and you want to like doodle while I'm talking, that's totally fine. But anyway, I just want you to maybe like just take a couple seconds and look at this and see if you can identify any of them. And then, yeah, it's just fun to see if you can identify who they are, and realize that you can know who they are just from their silhouettes. And a lot of their personality comes through. You know, I think that even like if there are some adults in the room, which there are, like they're going to be able to identify different characters because some of them are older, like older characters. But anyway, silhouette. And also when we look at these characters, like even these characters here or these characters here, you know, the people who drew these are really good at drawing. They're drawing, they've been drawing for a long time, and it takes practice. Like everything takes practice. So, but initially, like if you have a hard time drawing, staying with geometric shapes is a really like good idea. And I think it's actually like to your advantage. Like, you know, having like a circle head or a rectangle head and having simple face structures and simple bodies and maybe simple patterns. This is an example, like this is a page from, or a panel from a comic, a book that, if you're into making comics, is a book that I recommend. You can even write this down if you want. It's called Understanding Comics. And it goes through just like the basic basic ideas of comics. This here is I wanted to show you this because like the degree of realism that you can achieve might not be the best thing for your comic. Like on the left, there's a very specific man. And then as it gets like simplified and turned into an icon, it becomes more universal. Like the more simple the character, the more it becomes all of us instead of specifically that man. So, you know, drawing simply isn't a bad thing. So right now, I'm gonna switch to, I'm gonna go to Photoshop. I really like drawing on paper. Like I like drawing on paper, but it's really hard to show you paper right now because we're all working, like I'm working on a computer, or I'm talking to you through a computer. So it's handy for me to just to draw on the Photoshop. So I don't usually draw digitally, but I wanted to kind of show you some things. So initially when I was like a younger person, here, I'm gonna make this black. Sorry. There might be some hiccups in me going through this, but this is, let's make this bigger. So like when I was younger, like I would draw a lot of characters that, and I can draw slightly better. I can draw better than what I'm gonna show you because I'm always self-conscious about drawing bad pictures in front of people. But I just wanted to show you maybe, that's a big foot, but like I would draw things that kind of look like this, where I would have like a body and hands and feet like this, and I would draw them in an environment. Oops, I'm losing my pen. Like I would draw them like on the ground, and here's like a tree, and like that's, you know, I would draw like that. I even in middle school I would do things like this. Like I would draw a square in the corner of my like science notebook, and then I would draw another square like this. Do people do this? Do you ever draw squares like this and then connect them? I know I can't really hear you, but I'm kind of assuming that yes, you have done this. So that's, if you want to draw like more, you know, engaging pictures than like really flat pictures, it's really as simple as that box that I just drew. So if you have drawn that before, you can draw more dynamic things. So I'll just show you the same, I'll just draw the same guy, basically the same guy. But instead of drawing the ground underneath him like I did before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the line in back of him or her, I don't know who this person is, and draw the ground, like the tree, also breaking that surface. So then all of a sudden I'm just using overlap. And overlap really is the biggest thing when it comes to just making your pictures have more dimension to them. It's, and you know, here I'll show you, I feel like I didn't quite, here I'll just in this corner here, I'll draw the same thing, but now I'll draw a room. So like a quick person in a room, but kind of taking inspiration from that box up there and that I drew with the two squares. So now I have a person that's in a room. And that's like that's like a really big deal. It's just like making your character like break into a three-dimensional space. Going to, let's see. So I'm gonna have slight, so I'm gonna cover that all up. Another thing that was like really important to me when I was younger was another version of that idea of breaking space. So I also used to really like drawing dinosaurs, and I would kind of draw dinosaurs that looked like this, sort of maybe flat and with like, you know, some scales or something. But then, oh yeah, maybe I'll draw some like armor or some spikes on the monster dinosaur. But then if you think back to what I was just saying about breaking, like having things overlap, you can start doing things like this where you have like spikes that are coming through the skin, you know, coming out of the skin of the dinosaur. So instead of it feeling like they're attached, like they're glued on, it's like they're actually like attached to the dinosaur. And then I would maybe do the same thing with teeth. Like on the bottom row of the teeth, like I'll have this overlap of the jaw. So all of a sudden, like now the mouth is three-dimensional because I have like a forward, I have this is a very creepy looking dinosaur. I don't know what that is. That's very creepy looking. It's kind of too disturbing looking. I'm gonna erase part of that face. I wasn't gonna erase because I feel like I'm kind of cheating by drawing on, oops. Oops, come on, there you go. So then, here I'll just, oops, that's, sorry. I don't usually draw in Photoshop very much, but I'll have the same thing happen with the legs, the overlapping happening. So I have, instead of it having like a flat space, I'll just give it a little bit of dimension. And when I'm doing that, I also add a little bit of black underneath things. Like if there's an underneath, like underneath the arm, or like underneath this leg, or here, this arm is back here, and it's underneath like its jaw. Like I'll just fill it in with black, and then it gives it even more dimension because I don't know. I really like things that have like a visual rhythm to them, like having like white space, but also having like black space. So getting into, you know, filling things in with pencil or filling it in with ink will just give it a little bit more dimension. And even so underneath this dinosaur, like I'll put a shadow underneath this way. So basically, whenever something is underneath something, you can add a little bit of black, and it will give it some more dimension. And like these spikes, you know, you could even, I don't know, like draw like weird little places where it's popping like through the bone, like it's coming out of the skeleton and it's coming out of the skin. You know, it's kind of gross looking. Anyway, that's a good way of making your stuff look more three-dimensional. I would like right now, if you could, on a fresh piece of paper, I'm gonna make up some characters. And I'd like you to do the same thing. Like I would like you to not draw, maybe you can draw what I'm drawing, but I would also like you to maybe make up a character using basic shapes. So maybe draw some circles on your page. I just draw a bunch of circles and then draw like a bunch of like different geometric shapes, like a square or a triangle. We're just gonna make some simple characters. If you're a person who draws all the time, maybe you want to draw more complicated things, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, if you want, right now we're just going to draw some geometric shapes. Maybe a rectangle body. We're just going to make like one for the head and one for the body. And then I'm going to kind of stop talking for a little bit, and I'm going to make up 3 characters, and I'd like you to try to make up 3 characters on your own. If there's any questions, I like answering questions, but maybe we could even have questions at the end. It doesn't matter to me. And they can be anything. They can be like an animal, or they can be a person or a robot, or a toaster, be anything. And some people, I every once in a while meet people that say that there's like certain things they don't like to draw, like hands. I want to just say that hands aren't as hard to draw as people say they are. It's really just like a snowball with like a bunch of fingers on it. Like you don't need to draw a photorealistic hand to draw hands. You can just draw like a simple ball with little things coming off. Oops. And it's really just as good. Even as a person who draws like really complicated pictures, like if you look at any of the hands I ever draw, it's usually just like a version of this, like a bunch of like a kind of a squiggle. I'm gonna write some hands. Okay, maybe like just spend like another minute making up making up your last character. Add some details to them. But it is good to have characters slightly simple. Like a good idea is to have simple geometric shapes, or fairly simple geometric shapes, and then maybe give them like a pattern. Like if a character has maybe like striped socks on, it's pretty easy to remember that you have a character with like enormous, striped socks or something, or like a hat, with a very memorable hat. Well, one more thing, I'm gonna just check on time. I want to make sure I don't go crazy with time. let's see, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna make another picture here. One other thing that I'm just thinking about this, our emotions. You don't have to draw this if you are still drawing your characters, but it's kind of fun to kind of play with emotions, with having, I'm just gonna draw the same face, but with slightly different mouth, and just show you how easy it is to make different emotions. I'm gonna draw the same thing again down here. And then, oops. So then we just play with eyebrows, right? So it's basically just making a smiley face with a nose is what I just did. And then, you know, maybe you have like a, you know, like a scheming one just with the eyebrows. Now that character is like scheming, and now this character is happy. It's like the same face, but just different eyebrows. So then up here, you have like down eyebrows. And these aren't, you know, you can make, there's like hundreds of different types of eyebrows. But you have, you know, these eyebrows here make this just an angry person. And then down here, it's maybe just sort of surprised, but sort of like contemplating. And then here, you know, I don't even know what emotion that is. Maybe just disgruntled. And then here is just maybe a person who's not feeling anything. Anyway, just playing around with eyebrows and playing around with the shape of the mouth is really where all the emotion. Anyway, there you go. I'm gonna go back to my slideshow. I'm gonna talk about a lot of things, but anyway, hopefully you made up at least one good character or a character that you like enough, because we're gonna try to use one of them later. Okay, so I have a lot of, because I just figure that some of you are people who really like to draw. So I would like to also just give the people who really like to draw advice. And my advice, like when I was younger, there were like a lot of people that I knew that drew that liked to copy things, you know, like like, you know, tracing or copying. And then there are people who really like to draw from their imagination. At some point, like if you want, and I know that not like, you know, not everybody wants to be a professional artist, but if you ever wanted to be, like one thing to do is just try to work on at being the kind of artist that's like the opposite of the artist that you are. Like if you're really into drawing from your imagination, you should practice drawing from life. Like it's a really important thing. Like the more you draw from life, the more you, like when you're working on your stuff from your imagination, you don't have to like look at pictures. So here's a picture I drew of some of my friends playing video games. Like I was just like watching them playing video games. And here's a picture I drew while I was on like jury duty. Like I just basically try to draw whenever I am doing stuff. Like here's a picture last Christmas or 2 Christmases ago. I was in Arizona with my family, and my wife and her cousin and her uncle were playing Scrabble, and I wasn't playing Scrabble, so I drew them playing Scrabble. And the reason I do that is just to kind of, you know, sharpen my senses and sharpen like my ability to look at things and to observe things. Like it's fine to draw from pictures, but I also really encourage you to draw your surroundings, especially when, you know, maybe we spend more time at home these days. I'm not sure. And here's a picture. So you don't always have to draw people. Like people are hard to draw, maybe, but or anyway, people think people are hard to draw, but anyway, you can also draw your pets or your dirty dishes or your bedroom. This is a picture of my cat Sylvia and my dog Hoagie. Anyway, I'm going through a lot of ideas, but anyway, it's a good idea. I'm just putting it out there. I hope I'm not talking too much. I was gonna just sort of briefly show you how I come up with the pictures I come up with, like composing. Like when you're making like a really elaborate picture, a good thing to do in the beginning is to think about it like more simple than just like when I was saying, I don't draw this gigantic picture by starting with one person's face and then draw the rest of it. Like I basically plan out the entire thing early. And the way that I do that is with something called thumbnails. And the reason they're called thumbnails is that they're barely bigger than your thumbnail or even the same size as your thumbnail. So extremely tiny. But then I draw the picture that I want to draw big, but I draw it as a thumbnail because if I get it wrong at that size, I can do it again and again and again and again, and it only takes me like 2 or 3 minutes. And then I eventually have a bunch of thumbnails, and then I can say, well, I really like that one the best. So here, for example, this is a book that I'm currently working on, and I'm almost finished with it. It's called Cat Hats. In addition to making comics, I also do picture books, like for children's picture books. And this is a book written by the author Daniel Pinkwater, and it's called Cat Hats. It's coming out next year. But basically what I do is I read the entire book. There's no pictures in the book. It's just like a story without any pictures or an email. It's just a text document. And then I look at it, I read it, and I divide it up. Like I divide it up. I decide what the characters look like. I decide where they live, and I decide what it looks like. And then I do these thumbnails. So this is like thumbnails for an entire book. So I'm just going to show you this one. Like I'm going to show you what I did for one particular page. So this is like a blow up like this. So this right here is like barely bigger than maybe like 2 quarters next to each other. So it's really, really tiny. So I did a draft, like I do it, and like I draw the entire book, but I draw it, the size of a quarter. And then at this point I could still make decisions. I can like change my mind. So after I did this, I did this. So it's slightly more detailed. It's much bigger. Like instead of the size of a quarter, I drew it on a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And it's a man looking at a cat, making eye contact with a cat, and then the cat runs off into the woods. So here's that same thing, and then I made it more complicated. And then when I like that, I paint it. So I trace it all onto nicer paper, and then like I really like paint. So, and then I paint it in with, it's a paint called gouache. But anyway, I don't want to give you, I'm not trying to overwhelm you. But anyway, so I do that. But you can do stuff like this with markers if you want. But so that's the process, is simple. You stay simple, you make it slightly more complex, and then you make it finished. But then you still have that quality that's from that tiny thumbnail. Like it still has the energy and the composition that was successful as a small drawing. It just works better when it's bigger. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to cram things in. So I'm gonna just sort of show you how I compose an image. I'm just gonna see if people have any suggestions. Otherwise I can come up with a setting, a character, and an emotion. But I was wondering if anybody had any suggestions of what they would like to see drawn. And then I could draw that. I think it's kind of fun to realize that I'm taking suggestions. But does anybody have any opinions about, I was gonna draw a setting, a character in like some sort of emotion. Does anybody have any ideas?
So if you could type the ideas in the chat, then we can get those to Mr. Renier.
Yeah, so a setting, a character, and an emotion. And if we have more than one character, like if people are like saying a bunch of different characters, like I can incorporate a lot of things.
So we have one entry, creepy monsters.
A what? Cookie Monster?
Monsters.
Creepy. You said creepy?
Correct.
Okay, creepy monster.
And I see more typing happening, so we'll see what more we get here. Oh, in a swamp.
What was that?
Creepy monsters in a swamp.
Oh, this is good.
And then I also
Okay.
have despair and sadness.
Fear and sadness?
Despair.
Oh wow, this is a okay. All right, here we go. Here we go. Despair and sadness. So, all right, my computer's slightly lagging behind. Okay, so I'm just clearing that image. So again, like the first thing that I do when I'm working is I do thumbnails. Like I like making little, so maybe like if you want to draw along with me with for the creepy monster in a despair in a swamp, like I just draw a bunch of pictures that I'm not going to care about. So maybe I'll just draw like 4. Here, I'll zoom in. I draw them tiny. So I draw them tiny, like again, like the size of a quarter, but I'm drawing them on the computer so they're significantly bigger. But I like to think about my images in a similar way that I like to think about my comics. Like a comic has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I like thinking about images as having like a beginning, middle, and end, or like a foreground, midground, and background. Like I like composing images like that. So if there's like a creepy monster, I'm gonna just kind of draw like maybe maybe I'll draw a different kind of monster than one I just drew, because that was I'll draw like a swamp monster that's like, I don't know. I'm just kind of pretending he's maybe his wings and he's sad. And then I try to think about the ground, and I like to think about foreground, like what's in front. Like I like put things in front, and I like using black and white, and kind of maybe these trees are kind of like dripping with, or like really the leaves are maybe rotting and stuff. And then I like doing that, and then maybe there's like a hut back here. So I like using overlap, foreground, midground, and background. Maybe there's like some tall grass in the front, like this, or I don't know. There's stuff in the front, and then maybe in the back there's like a mountain or something. I don't know. Anyway, so I just sort of play around with black and white, and I like putting down large areas of black just because it kind of makes my eye go all around instead of hanging out in one spot. Like I kind of like letting my eye go around. So when I thumbnail, I try not to be happy with the first picture I draw, because usually it seems like maybe it's too easy. Like I like thinking about like what would it look like from a different point of view. What would it look like? Maybe there's like a large dead tree. Keep putting trees are nice because you can just place them everywhere if you want. But I start putting, maybe there's like maybe the clouds are really dark. I don't know. I just start playing around with this, and then I just do it a couple times. Maybe I'll do one more. I won't do 4, I'll just do 3. But I try to think about it from a different point of view, or try to think about it like, is there a different way that I could show? Maybe there's a campfire, you know, and there's like some logs around, and then the big creepy monster, maybe he just got some bad news about something, and he's sitting next to the fire, sort of sad. Oh no, that looks angry. Anyway, and then maybe there's bats flying around. I don't know. I like breaking up space with, let's see. I'm looking down at this character. Maybe there's like the edge of the swamp right here. All right, just for example's sake, I'm gonna choose this one. I like to choose not my first idea, even though I kind of like my first idea the best. I'm gonna choose my first idea. Usually I don't choose my first idea because I come up with like 30 ideas and then I choose the one. But I'm just gonna choose my first one because it actually looks the best in my opinion. So I'm gonna select it, marquee. And then and then I also, this is also kind of cheating in my opinion for myself, but I usually don't just like copy and paste my thumbnail and put it in another image. But usually what I do is I pick the thumbnail that I like, and then I do a better version of it, but using the same proportions, because that's really what I'm looking for, is like, if it works really tiny, it'll work really amazing when it's big. So I'm just making this bigger, but if you were doing this on your own, you could just, just pencil it bigger on a bigger piece of paper, but based off of your thumbnail. And then I'm gonna gray this out and pretend it's like my pencil line. And then I'm gonna, I'm gonna draw on top of it. So I'm gonna pretend that this is just like I'm repenciling it. And then I can start really, putting in significant details. Like I can start making this look like an actual, like, creepy monster. Oops, come on. Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. So I'll start adding, maybe I'll put like a love letter. It got a disappointing love letter from another swamp monster. And maybe it has wings. Oh yeah, I said it had wings. Really weird little wings. And then these spikes, again, like I like spikes because it gives a little bit of a three-dimensional feel to it. And then I'll give it kind of like the legs of a dog or something, or like a, and that's another thing about drawing from life. If you draw from life, then you can sort of know how a dog's legs work and just draw that and not, hesitate. You just sort of remember how it looks. So I'll draw like the setting now. Maybe there's like a skull of a fallen adversary or something, I don't know, just to make it look creepy. And maybe there's like a dragonfly. Maybe there's like a lot of dragonflies. I don't know. I'm just sort of making it up as I go, obviously. And then remember I like the amount of ink that I used, or I'm saying ink even though I'm drawing digitally, but like I like these large spaces because it really kind of sucks us in. Like having these large areas of black and white gets us to investigate a little bit better. It's easier on the eyes having both large black spaces and white spaces when you're working in black and white. Right, it's probably a better way of doing this. I'll just use the dump tool. See if it works. Yay, it worked. Sometimes it fills in everything and then I realize that I missed some spot. And then like this creepy tree that I drew in the beginning, I'll just draw a better version of it here. Okay, let's see. And then oops, that happens when you don't find all of the spots there. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of white space up here. That should work, okay. So then, trying to keep, because I also want to talk about comics. It's like so many, there's like a lot of things that I want, and if anybody ever, I'm easy to, if you can look at my website or something and you're like, I saw what you were doing, how do you do this? I'll write you back. I'll try to write you back. Anyway, but here's a swamp, here's the water, here's the shore, and I'll just finish with the mountain. I'll try to do it really like with a dainty line, like really, really faint because it's way off in the distance. If you put things that are in the foreground with a heavier line, it's like sort of like an atmospheric perspective. So it's like perspective without using, like vanishing points and things like that. I don't know if people know how to draw with perspective, but you can kind of fake perspective if you just have things passing in front of one another and the lines get fainter and fainter as they go off into the distance. So there's a quick picture, and then I just erased the line. So basically, that's how I work really quickly, is just that I come up with an idea like this, and then I like that idea, and then I draw it like this, and then, it gives me more space. Like I can, there's a lot of things that I would improve. Like there obviously needs to be like a lot more skulls. Anyway, like it should probably be littered with skulls. Let's see, I'm trying to think but then you can add color, and you can add, or like, gray tones or all sorts of things. But that's basically how I put an image together. We have about 15 minutes, but I wanted to talk about comics. So I have a lot. Maybe I know that I'm not trying to overwhelm people, but if you are interested in this, you might want to just write some of these words down. I'm just going to kind of explain what comics are, and we're not really going to get a chance to read because we have not a crazy amount of time, but I'm just going to kind of go through what comics are. So comics are words and images, so graphics in a sequence, and they're reproduced. So that's kind of the characteristic of comics, is that they're either in a book form, or now you can read things online, but the end result isn't the piece of artwork in your hand, it's that you shared it with the world. So reproduction. So these are, I just wanted to show you, just kind of walk through, and if you like any of the artwork, you might want to write down the names of the people. So this is the artist Chris Ware, who's a Chicago cartoonist, who's really amazing. But this is a panel, right? So that's a panel. So comics are just made of, basically, like when I make my comics, I do what I just did, but then I do it for like every image. And I think about, sequence, and I think about what goes before what. So panels, the space in between the comics is called the gutter. And the gutter is basically where the reader gets to connect the dots. Like I like thinking about the panels as dots, and I like a connect the dots. Like here's this happening, but then the space in between is where the reader gets a chance to like imagine what happens in between. So that's gutters. And comics usually have like rows, and that's called a tier. So we have like, just like a cake has tiers, comics have tiers. Anyway, this is called the grid. I'm gonna kind of go through some of these, not slowly, because anyway, just like when there's lots of panels, cartoonists like to call it, the grid, or what their grid is. And some of the grids are really simple. And I actually think if you've never made comics before, the best way to start is to try to keep it simple and to use the democratic grid, where you just divide the paper into equal boxes. Because then you're not thinking about, there's just like too many things to think about when you're using like lots of different shaped panels, because all of a sudden you have like a visual hierarchy, and you kind of, it's easier just to treat every moment as an individual moment and the same. Anyway, it's a good way to get good at making comics, is to try to keep it simple in the beginning. These are word balloons. That's how people talk in comics. There's also thought balloons that have like the bubbles coming out of their heads. That's the thought balloon. There's captions for like single panel comics, just like the word underneath. There's sound effects. And the reason I'm telling you this is that you should be, if you want to make comics, you should try using all of these things. Like sound effects are important. They're cool and they're important because I don't know, we all know what it means. And then this is a thing called Emonada, which is basically like, I don't know if anybody plays Animal Crossing or, but like when emotions come out of the person's head, or like if things come out of their head, like if you've ever seen a cartoon character get hit by a brick and then there's stars, like we know that there aren't literally stars coming out of their head, but that's called Emonada, which is, or it's basically like an emoji, but in comics. So it is sort of, it's like a shorthand for an emotion or like a feeling. Okay, and then thumbnails again. I just wanted to reiterate that thumbnails are important. Yeah, and that we make thumbnails and then we make better images off of them. So I went really fast. I apologize if I went too fast. I just had a lot of ideas that I wanted to get through. And I'm just gonna, I just wanted us to get started working on some comics. So we're gonna actually work on some comics. What I'd like you to do is to write down, like, if you can, on a scrap piece of paper. You don't have to do this on a fresh piece of paper. What I'd like you to do is write like 5 to 10 like insane sentences, like this. Like I have some examples. There's an eyeball in my peanut butter. Who let all the squirrels into the bathroom? A pizza has mysteriously appeared in the mailbox. There are way too many parrots in the shower. All right, so make a list of 5 to 10 crazy sentences, and then I'm going to show you this next little thing. Let's go for 5 minutes. I'm not going to talk for 5 minutes, but I want you to just, 5 minutes, and just come up with a bunch of crazy sentences, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with it. So about 2 more minutes. Try to make the sentences different from one another. Like if you did it, like try not to say like they're, just changing one word about them or something. Like try to really rack your brain to make some insane sentences. So a little less than a minute left. I'd like you to maybe circle your top 2, maybe the ones that you think are that are surprising to you or that make you kind of laugh. Like pick one or two. Well, you can pick 1 or 2, but we're gonna work on one of them. And if you want to try another comic later, like this is just like a good way of making a quick comic, and getting good at, I don't know, not worrying so much about what you're going to make a comic about. You're just going to make a comic. So let's see. The next thing I'd like you to do is to have a fresh piece of paper. So this is my digital piece of paper. So just have it, I'd like you to have it placed this way, or I guess it doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. You can have it facing which way, but when I'm working, because I'm going to make a comic and I'm going to make it like portrait oriented. So not horizontal, but vertical. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw 2 lines, and you don't need a ruler. We'll think of this as like a rough draft. So if you ever wanted to make a better version, you could. Like I always make a rough draft before I make a final, but so low stakes, these don't need to be perfect. So I'd like you to make 2 lines going down, and then I'd like you to make 2 lines going across like that. So obviously I didn't use a ruler. I just drew it freehand. And I'd like you to maybe look at your characters that you drew earlier and pick one that you want to draw more of. If you want to just pick one that you think is, maybe pick one that is the easiest to draw. Like if you drew one that isn't that complicated. One thing that's sort of a good thing to remember if you make more comics is the more complicated your characters are, the harder they are to draw over and over and over again. Like a thing that a lot of cartoonists, like young cartoonists, get wrong, or like in my opinion, is just that they add too much stuff to their characters. Like there's just like buckles and like all these sorts of things. And if you have a character that's asymmetrical, it's hard to remember. Like if you have somebody with a broken arm, it's hard to remember which arm is broken all the time. You're like, oh, the left arm is broken. Shoot, I have to redraw that picture. So keeping your characters kind of symmetrical is the easiest way of not having to remember what, anyway, that's just random advice. So what I'd like you to do is to draw your character saying the crazy sentence in the center panel. And you can add background to, like I will add background to the rest of it, but I'd like you to have your character saying that. So let's take maybe 5 minutes and draw that in the center panel right there.
This is just a random question, Aaron. Is there how do you choose which words you make in all capitals and which ones you do in upper and lowercase?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess I like if I say it out loud in my head, like I don't literally say it out loud all the time, but in my head I can sort of like I hear where this, like the words that get like some sort of stress, like where like I try to think about where I can stress a word to maybe make it funnier, or to, I don't know. It's the same thing as like underlining a word, I think. Like you kind of have to play around with it, or just play around with, like when there's like a Calvin and Hobbes comic where he was practicing saying something and trying to make it sound sincere. I forget what the comic is, but and then that comic they would capitalize like one of the words. You could kind of hear that he was trying to figure out where he shouldn't like stress a certain word. And then I think at the same time, Hobbes was sort of critiquing the idea that he was being insincere. So you kind of have to play around with it and then just kind of stick to what you think sounds right. But anyway, that's sort of, and I don't know, it's off the cuff. I just sort of thought it was funny to have eyeball and then peanut butter in caps. I think I can't see. Let's see. Are people needing a lot more time? Are people are drawing, or are people done? Okay, so let's go. I'm gonna keep going. So after you have this center image, what I'd like you to do is work on these two, the ones I have in orange. So you're gonna make a panel. You're gonna write what happens before that, and you're gonna write what happens after that at the same time. These don't need to make any sense, but they need to kind of make sense within the world that you're establishing. So draw what happens before it and what happens after it. So I'm gonna go back to Photoshop and I'm gonna work on mine. So I just sort of going to, oops. So we'll take maybe another, I don't know, I'll draw mine and then I'll get kind of a sense of when we should stop. So I won't say how much time, but I'm just gonna kind of, realize where we're at by actually doing it myself. Oops. And usually, I know that I won't keep talking as we're drawing, but when I make my comics, I usually try to put the words in first, because if you've ever written like I'm sure we've all written something where we realized we didn't have enough space and you have to like kind of cram the words around to make them fit. Like it's like basically what you don't ever want to do with comics is you want your words to always have enough room. So I usually put my words in first, so then I realize how much space I have to draw. So anyway, random bit of advice. So maybe like another, hopefully, yeah, like maybe 30 seconds. Just try to put some, like maybe add a little bit of setting if that's something that you haven't done yet, or little details. Like maybe there's a picture hanging on the wall, or if you're, you know, or a fly flying around or something. Like it's nice to add little details. Okay, so then I would like you, maybe this is obvious, to work on these two panels. So we're basically just writing it from the center out and writing the beginning as we're writing the end. But so we're gonna work on the two corner panels, the ones that are in yellow now. Maybe you can add a new character. You know, maybe some things to think about is that you don't necessarily need to stay within the space that you're in. Like you could jump 1,000 years in the future. You could, you know, meanwhile, on a secret moon base on Mars, or a moon base on Moon, or you know, you can jump through time. You can do whatever you want. So anyway, let's just work on. Or if you want to introduce a different character or something, you could do that. Yeah, so we're going to do what happens after the. We're doing what's happening after that last panel and before the first panel. Okay. And I'm not sure. Maybe. Well, I'm going to mute myself for a second.
So Aaron has just finished his first yellow panel. And we were hoping to see some of your work. So if you would like to come up to the screen and show some of what you're doing, Aaron, I'm going to minimize or stop your screen share so we can see things a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So
just can I just say, before I even look at anything, so basically what we're gonna keep doing with those comics is that we're gonna keep working our way. So the last panels you draw are the first panel and the last panel at the same time. Anyway, so that's how it works. So, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll let's see. I wonder the best way of. I'll go full screen. Oh wow, 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 wow. Can I see? Oh wow! Oh, I love the robot with the bugs and the antenna. Great, it's great. Oh yes, look at all this great work. I love the striped shirt and the oh wow, 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 good stuff. Yes, yes, love it. I love the, I don't know, it looks, is that blood? It's kind of bloody. Oh, and the Colonel, oh, I love it. Oh, and the shading on that, is it a cape for the corn person, Colonel? I love it, love it. Oh, there's a, yeah, the dead bird, love it. Oh, wow. Wow, yay, yay. Oh, I love it. The emotions, the, wow. It's like is it like a space helmet? It looks like a space helmet. Oh, the floor. Look at that checkerboard floor. I love looking at patterns. Checkerboards are one of my favorite things to draw. Wow, those ears on that. Oh, yes. Nice, nice. And the glasses and I love the eyes. Nice. Good. Oh, yes. I love it. Looks like you're drawing a lot of settings, and I really love that. I think settings are important to draw, even if it's simple. Oh, yes. Is that like a TV head guy? Nice. Oh, yeah, and the dinosaur. Looks like we got some dinosaur, maybe. And then somebody, oh, I got sound effects in the, wow. Oh, I love that. I love that character. And the, wow. Good shapes, yeah. Like, really, it's all about like geometric shapes and, yeah, just good job. Oh, wow. Nice. Thank you for showing me. Cool. What is that? Oh, is it like a? Is this what does it say? A shaker? I can't hear.
I saw Lego at the
Like oh, and a mug guy. Love it. Yeah. Yeah, these are great. If anybody, I always have random advice, but I do think that if you're a person who likes to draw comics, like the best thing to do, best, I think the best advice I could come up with is just like start identifying like the things that you like. Start, like think about the things you like, and then identify what it is about the things you like that you like. So if you like something like Steven Universe, and you like thinking about it, like try to think about what it is about Steven Universe that you like, and then do the same thing with lots of things. What was that?
Here's one more that just popped up too.
Yeah. Oh, great. These are great. You guys are looking at. I can tell you that there's a lot of fans of like manga, and oh, I love the hair. I love hair. Hair is a good way of making your characters identifiable. As like having like a Bart. Like just think about Bart Simpson and Lisa Simpson. Like their haircuts is what really makes them. But what I was saying before was just like start identifying what you like about things, about art, and then just do that with a lot of art. Like art and like things about art, and be able to identify what it is about the art that you like, and then just keep doing that for the rest of your life, because having opinions about art as an artist is like really important. Like being able to say like, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, and then say that's why I like that, and then don't be ashamed of your influence. You know, like people worry maybe that they're like copying from a certain thing, and copying is great. Copy is great. But the more and more you copy, the more and more you copy from different things, the more and more you like basically create like lightning in a bottle, where it's like, where did that come from? It's like, well, I like a lot of things. So if you like a lot of things, you can put them all into your like your artistic mixing pot. And you do that basically for the rest of your life. You just keep looking at movies and comics, and anyway, just want to keep looking at stuff, be influenced and excited about things, old things, new things, everything. Anyway, I just threw so much at you. I hope everybody is doing okay. I guess I would just keep looking at, like, because a lot of people are into manga, right? You want to look at even like old manga, like look at, I would just say explore not only manga, but then other things. But anyway, I'm a fan of it too. I think you're doing like a really good job of like, because I can't even draw the eyes. Like I want to draw eyes like you're drawing, but I have a hard time of it because it's so like people know what it looks like, and I have a hard time mimicking it. But that's good. You did a good job.
So, what's like your favorite character that you've ever drawn in a whatever book?
Well, I really like the elephant character in my first book. It's kind of simple. It's just sort of like a circle with a trunk and ears. So I guess an elephant that I did in my first book. His name is Turnip because his head is sort of shaped like a turnip. But yeah, that's the answer to that. Anyway, I like all the thumbs up. Anyway, I don't know what else to say. Has anybody made comics before? Has anybody made comics before? I see some hands up.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, like you don't like the comic that I had us make is just like I just heard somebody else say that they had it as an assignment, and I was like, oh, that's an assignment that I don't have to explain like anything. It just like it writes itself. But obviously, like when I make a comic, I don't write this way. Like I don't always write from the center out, because that would be an insane way of working. But anyway, so usually when I write my longer stories, I have a hard time thinking linearly, like beginning, middle, and end. But I have a really easy time thinking of all the things that I want to happen. So I write them on Post-it notes, and I just keep them in an envelope when I'm thinking about a specific project. I like just keep a lot of ideas in an envelope, and then once the envelope gets like thick enough, I lay them out, and then I start moving them around, and then I am able to like take ideas out and insert ideas in and sort of play around with it. And then I have like a timeline, and then I start making a rough draft. So I cannot think of an entire story, but it's really helpful when you're writing a story to know the ending. But how do you know the ending unless I don't know. It's hard to know everything at once. So I don't think of everything at once. I let myself think of it organically, and then at some point I have to add structure in. So I can put them in a row. So that's another bit of advice if anybody wants to make a longer comic. There you go.
Minutes left if there's a final question for Aaron. Otherwise, we'll thank you so much for your time, and thank everyone for being part of this. Is there one last question? Great. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing this time with us and sharing your art and skill with us. It was great.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Jared.
thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Morgan. Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.